few days before February the 26th, the emperor had orders given to the guard to make a garden of an empty piece of ground adjoining their barracks on the west. This land was dug, broken up, leveled, the walks marked out, and the trees planted. Although it was a considerable piece of work, it was done in 3 days. When the emperor asked something of his soldiers, nobody was ever lazy. Everybody without distinction laid his hand to work. Nobody spared himself. It was a pleasure to see with what zeal everyone worked and the gaiety which prevailed among the workers. This occupation which the emperor gave them was not without ulterior objects. At the same time that it would deceive spies and lead them off the scent, it would wake the soldiers out of their sluggishness and put them in training. The last day that the soldiers were working on the garden, or the day before that, the English corvette came into the roadstead of Portofino. Its arrival at such an inopportune moment was very disturbing to the emperor. He was afraid that the preparations which he had been making for so long might have aroused the suspicions of the English spies. Happily, this was not the case. The corvette sailed away again on the 24th, the 25th, without suspecting what was in preparation. And as soon as she was seen in the open sea, there was no longer any reason for anticipating the least trouble from her. For that matter, the emperor had decided if she had remained in her anchorage until the day which he had fixed for his departure, to aim his cannon at her and sink her. If she attempted to resist, a number of ships of the island, both those belonging to the emperor and others which he had hired, had received orders to anchor at such and such a spot on the 26th at a given hour during the middle of the day. The guard, infantry, cavalry, artillery, and the Corsican battalion were told that everyone was to prepare his knapsack and his arms and to be ready for orders at any minute. This order was given at about 6 o'clock in the evening, and by nightfall, everyone started. Each company was at the place appointed for it, and the embarkation began immediately. As many troops as possible were put on board the brig. When the Inconstant had its full complement, the emperor did not delay in coming on board. About 9 o'clock, the fleet left the harbor. During the night, the ships which had the Corsican battalion on board came and joined it. The dismounted poles had been made to bring saddles and bridles in order that they might be mounted at the earliest possible moment. Some of the emperor's horses had been put on board, as well as his carriage. Those on duty either in the bedchamber or in the service de bouche were in the brig or the other boats. As for the stable service, men, horses, and carriages, everything remained at Portofino till further orders, except what was absolutely necessary, which had been put on board. The princesses remained on the island awaiting the result of the expedition. Mr. Blank, I do not recall the name of this person, who was commander of the National Guard, had been appointed governor of the island. I learned later that after the departure of the little fleet, the English corvette, which had Colonel Campbell on board, had returned to Portofino. On being informed of what had happened, the colonel had immediately gone to the princesses and vented his ill temper in the most indecent language, both against the emperor and against the princesses themselves. It was said that, having his handkerchief in his hand, he tore it with his teeth, and that what enraged him the most was the calmness with which Madame Mère replied to him. He was in despair because his active surveillance had been so completely baffled. During the night of the 26th, 27th, we made little progress. The wind hardly blew at all. The sea was calm. During the night, the wind freshened a little. At night, or 10 o'clock that night, we sighted a vessel which we knew for a French brig, which was going in the opposite direction from ours. It was commanded by Captain Andrew. We spoke to each other. I heard the words, "How is he?" which probably referred to the emperor. I do not remember what was said afterwards, except to wish each other a good journey. As the vessel had passed very close to us, the grenadiers had been told to stoop down so as not to be seen. This was the only ship which we met during our voyage. The weather remained fine throughout. The 1st of March, early, we made out the coast of Italy near that of France, and the latter during the forenoon. Then the emperor ordered us to take off the cockade of Elba and replace it with the tricolors. That of Elba was red and white, with the red in the center. There were 3 V's on the white part. At the same time that the soldiers put on their tricolored cockades, Monsieur Pont de Hero read in a loud voice an emperor's proclamation, which was received with transports of joy and repeated cries of "Vive l'Empereur!" During the day at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we dropped anchor in the Gulf Juan. We immediately disembarked and encamped in a square meadow close to the road from Fréjus to Antibes. The emperor's bivouac was established in the middle of the meadow, which was bordered on the right and left by quickset hedges, and on the north by the road. Before the disembarkation of the bulk of the little army, the emperor had sent some 20 men to Antibes, grenadiers commanded by an officer, to take possession of the place. This officer acted imprudently. Instead of leaving part of his men to guard the gate of the town, he took with him his whole squad, so that the commandant of the place, seeing so few men inside and being informed that there was no guard outside, raised the drawbridge, and our officer and his men found themselves caught as if in a rat trap. This little miscarriage annoyed the emperor greatly. It was a bad beginning.